Bellator MMA returns to San Jose when undefeated featherweight world champion AJ McKee faces former three-time champ Patricio Pitbull in an immediate must-see rematch. Don't miss it Friday, April 15th at the SAP Center. Bellator MMA returns to San Jose Friday, April 15th. It's a battle for the belt. When reigning champion Vadim Nemkov faces Corey Overtime Anderson for the world title and $1 million in the light heavyweight World Grand Prix final. Don't miss Nemkov versus Anderson.
Round and pound!
In a battle for light heavyweight supremacy and a whole lot of cash. Friday, April 15th at the SAP Center. For tickets, go to Ticketmaster.com.
This is Donald Parham of the LA Chargers, and you're listening to Chargers Unleashed, part of the LA Football Network. Stay jiggy.
Welcome to another episode of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. Today's show, of course, is being brought to you by Charger Bolt Family, Brewery X in Anaheim, and UFC Fit in Temecula. Dan Wolkenstein, I got to say, after a much-needed vacation for myself, I've been gone since last Thursday, just got back at about 11:45 last night. I'm definitely still feeling the jet lag. Came back with a insane weird sunburn because it was windy out there, so when I'd be putting the sunscreen on, I kind of got like, it just all over here.
We got zebras.
But definitely wasn't burned as badly as I was watching the game on Sunday. And you know what the best part about this is, Dan, is that I feel like this is falling right back into our usual element. This is the first type of podcast that will rival many of the podcasts of 2020 that you and I had, whereas Dan Wolkenstein, of course, my co-host, is normally the optimist of the two of us. And guilty as charged, I am the pessimist of this duo. So we had to endure watching the first Chargers loss of 2021. Wow. Sloppy, undisciplined. Yes, bad officiating, but just an overall poorly executed game from the Chargers in a lot of different aspects. There were some good things, though, and we will, of course, talk about those. Some good takeaways, believe it or not, for everybody who is up in their feelings. But the feelings will be thrown against the wall today. That's why Dan and I wanted to do this live, because obviously we want to get a chance to talk to all of you. Dan, I know there were 5 total voicemails that were left on the Chargers Unleashed hotline. I'm sure that those will be entertaining, to say the very least. So I cannot wait to get into that. But Dan Wolkenstein, hello, sir.
Floor. Oh, man. Well, Jake, welcome back to the mainland. When you showed me your picture of your sunburn, I was dying. I was absolutely dying. But welcome back.
Wind gusts, man.
Welcome back to reality. For folks who are joining us live, thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to engage as much as you'd like. Comment whether you're with us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you are. Come say hi. We'll go ahead, as always, put those comments up on the screen as we go through today. Again, for folks who have not yet subscribed, we have some special guests coming on to the show sneak peek this coming day, actually tomorrow and the day after, Jake. We've got 2 straight back-to-back special guests to help us cover
week on a
this
short week.
Kansas City Chiefs huge matchup coming up. But we get to talk about what was a loss, 20-17. Chargers go down to the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, we'll go into the good and the bad. We'll go into some SoFi stuff because, Jake, I was there and got to witness it firsthand. So, Jake, do we want to let the pessimist start or the optimist start?
It's always nice to hear the pessimist after the fact because, Dan, you'll talk about this, and I know this is going to be one of those rare occasions where you and I don't differ that much because I know that you're actually bringing a little bit of pessimism in your shopping bag today. But you know what? By all means, go ahead and kick us off. Let's get the good stuff out of the way, because I'm sure a majority of this show is going to be talking about the bad, what needs to improve, and where do we go from here. So go ahead.
Whew, okay, good stuff. Well, so let's start off the good stuff with some hellos. Jason Rosenberg, what's up, guys? Got Williams Escobar with a bunch of lightning bolts. Jason, we are doing quite well on this fine hump day on a Wednesdays. Robert Carper, what's up? Thanks for joining us. Got a lot of folks coming to us from YouTube right now, which is fun. Curtis has given us a quick sneak peek. It's not that they lost, it's how they lost. That's tiptoeing into the land of Jake's pessimism.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get into what I think are some positives. And we'll get back to positives because I know
This should be short.
Jake's going to try to rip this from me and make this into a negative cluster. But no, there were some positives that came from this game. Number one, Chargers fans, we got to go to a home game in SoFi. And Jake, I got to tell you, I was at Thunder Alley, got there bright and early before all the traffic because I heard traffic was going to be a cluster. Thunder Alley was unreal. Like, it was, I have not seen that much tailgating for Chargers events in a minute. Thunder Alley was great. And SoFi, dare I say, pun intended, was electric. And for all of the folks who are sitting here who were not at the game, bitching about us having no fans or us being overrun by Cowboys fans, you don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying. Stop talking.
Was Bill Plaschke at the game?
No, I don't think he was, but he sure sounded like he was.
Sure sounded like he was, but
I will say, so positive. For a Chargers team who has gone through all of what happened on the San Diego stuff, then in a soccer stadium getting overrun, 70-30 by opposing fans, and we could talk about the economics and the reasons why, but long story short, it happened. To then go up against a Cowboys team as their home opener, who arguably has the most well-traveled fan base in the entire NFL, Chargers fans showed up in spades. In my section, Chargers fans 100% outnumbered Cowboys fans. Probably 70-30 in my section. But overall, about 50-50. We had Dak Prescott having to call timeouts, delay of game penalties happening. Dare I say we had a home field advantage. Now, yes, there were a ton of Cowboys fans. Fully expected. Nothing like what we saw in years past. 50-50 split. Arguably, you could say Chargers may have had the edge of some sections, flipped the other way. But overall, huge success for SoFi. You even heard some of the players talk about it during the mic'd up with Derwin James, how they heard us loud and clear. This is just the beginning. Congrats. Props to everyone who showed up. Positive. Positive number two, Jake. We saw a bunch of mistakes and things that were happening in this game. And a lot of people are going to talk about Justin Herbert and his interceptions. One of them was a great play by Diggs. The other one, Keenan Allen, was tripped. Didn't just fall, was tripped. Throws the ball in the end zone, although you could argue he should have thrown it somewhere else. But yes. Otherwise, go back, and after watching that game, Jake, Justin Herbert had himself a damn day. Take away all of the penalties and all of the officiating crap that we had to deal with. He damn well could have thrown for 500 yards on Sunday. Like, not even exaggerating. He lost 50 yards by itself on the one play to Donald Parham for the touchdown. So Justin Herbert, positive. He balled out. You saw some throws, Jake, and it's hard to get a feel for how good some of these throws are. But when you're live and you see some of the throws that he makes, it's just unreal. So positive there. Positive number three. I would argue our defense, for how horrific our run defense was in the first half, even second half, at the end of the day, Jake, 6 points in the second half given up to the Cowboys, who have a pretty darn good offense. Yes. Do you agree that overall the Chargers actually had some defensive adjustments, only allowing 6 points, 3 of which was a 56-yard field goal at the end of the game in the second half? At the end of the day, like, our defense did what we wanted. 20 points total. I'll take that every day. Would you agree?
If you put it in that context, as far as points given up in the second half, adjustments made from that standpoint, then yeah, I'll agree with you. But you're getting to the point where it's a stretch. I won't say any more than that. I'm just saying you're stretching it there. That's about the only thing that you could pull out of the defense standpoint that was positive.
Okay, I'm going to get rid of all of the optimism here, or at least I'll let you go on your rant here because I know it's coming. At the end of the day, Keenan Allen balled out. Mike Williams balled out. Jared Cook balled out. Take away the penalties. Donald Parham had 50 yards. Like, this team did great statistically. Okay? Our pass defense was very good. 4 out of the 5 offensive linemen were very good. There were some issues, lots of issues, but there were a lot of positives to take from this. And I'm going to stop there because
right now you're searching. I can tell by the look on your face. You're searching for any other positive thing that you could possibly pull out of this.
Yes, I am. So without further ado, because I think there's a lot of nuances to the pessimism that's about to come, but I know you have been clamoring since Sunday. I would argue 5 minutes into that game, you've been clamoring to come on here and just spew venom about what you've seen. So before we all get to witness what is about to become a very sad story, very somber moment, let's all just take a moment and appreciate what we're about to see. Jake, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. If you told me
I'm so scared,
Dak Prescott was going to finish this game throwing for just over 275, 0 touchdowns, and an interception, I would have bet money, 100%, that I would have said that the Chargers won this game. There's no way that happens and this team loses. No way. Of course, we're not living in the perfect universe. We're not living in Dan Wolkenstein's so-called rainbow land.
It's beautiful
We don't
there.
live in that world. So what, unfortunately, that myself, Dan Wolkenstein, and the rest of the Chargers fan base had to witness was a very undisciplined, prepared team. You have to admit that with all the penalties. Some questionables, yes. I'm not going to completely eliminate the officiating because the Chargers had several opportunities that they screwed up themselves to not take control of this game. Can't take away the officiating, but I'm not going to put 100% blame on the officiating either because there were several opportunities that this team had to overcome those type of things from the officials. But I was witnessing a run game, and Dan, this is when I texted you when I saw and started hearing the lines. 76 yards rushing allowed in the first quarter. 76 yards rushing allowed in the first quarter.
One more time for the folks in the back.
By the time that the game was done, the Chargers had yielded over 200 yards rushing, over 100 yards to a backup running back, mind you. This made me remember the days of when Adrian Peterson took it nearly, what was it, 293, if I remember the number correctly, back in 2007.
That sucked.
It was like this because Minnesota didn't need to do anything except tout the ball to AP. Outside of the Swiss cheese running game that there was, I can't remember exactly who it was as far as one of their receivers, but he juked, and there was missed tackles all over the place that he ended up going for about 12 yards. I couldn't remember if that was Wilson or if that was Lamb that ended up catching it in the flat.
I think it was Wilson, I believe, and it was Derwin James that he cut first.
I mean, there were missed tackles all over the place, Dan, and that is something that's carrying over from last week at Washington as well. So that needs to get straightened out in a hurry. Offensively, man, oh man, you got to start and finish with Storm Norton. Storm Norton, say what you will about it being a backup offensive lineman, gave one of the worst performances by any offensive lineman in the history of the NFL to an individual, not taking anything away from his college accolades and where he was drafted. Micah Parsons is a hell of a player, but he gave up 10 total pressures to a man that had not played defensive end since high school. The offense could not get going. Justin Herbert was out of sorts. By the way that Micah Parsons was dominating that side of the line, it gave Dallas's defense more of a flexibility to disguise their pressures and where else it was coming from. Obviously, Rashawn Slater did what he could. He ended up allowing 4. Corey Linsley, Matt Filer, they ended up having good games. I don't even think that they ended up yielding any pressures throughout this game. But Justin Herbert, for a majority of the game, looked like he was running for his life. He was out of sorts trying to make plays any way that he could. And to his credit, still threw for over 300 yards and had multiple opportunities to put it in the end zone. Now, Dan, my biggest gripe here is going to be of 2 things, because what I'm going to really harp on today is trends. Not so much what took place in the Dallas game, because we can pick that apart all day, every day. I'm sure we're going to be repeating ourselves from everybody that's in the chat room for everything that they have to get off their chest. I'm sure from what people are going to be saying on the Chargers Unleashed hotline later. But there's 2 trends here that need to get fixed in a hurry. Number 1, obviously, the run defense. This run defense has yielded over 350 yards on the ground in the last 2 weeks. That has to stop. Dan, I've been saying it and saying it and saying it for months, that one of the biggest weaknesses of this team that I felt was the depth at interior defensive line. We didn't have Justin Jones this week, which we missed Justin Jones against Dallas. That is for sure. You let Cortez Broughton walk in free agency. Arguably throughout training camp, he was one of your more better run-stuffing defensive linemen that you had. Linval Joseph's only one man. He can only do so much. Jerry Tillery, he had his moments, but he's not at the point where he's going to be able to make that type of jump. Plus, it's never been his bread and butter since the days of Notre Dame for him. So this run defense, I don't know how you're going to fix it, but it damn sure isn't going to get fixed in 1 week. Whether it's from a personnel standpoint, obviously, number 1, you need Justin Jones back. You need to add something.
Okay, I'm going to push back for a second. Before you go to your second point, the interior defensive line, I know, has been a concern of yours for quite some time. And Brandon Staley was asked about kind of the gashes that they gave up in the run defense all day long.
I know what you're about to say.
And he talked about schematically, they had the right defense to stop their run. And folks just flat out did not execute. In a future episode, we'll go into the semantics and the specifics of what he meant by that. But long story short, in this Staley scheme, and again, having no preseason for a lot of the starters didn't help. I'm talking to you, Jerry Tillery, Bosa. This is a new scheme for them. It's going to take some time for them to get used to what their responsibilities are. And a lot of these guys in past schemes are, when you're on the defensive line, your goal is to get penetration, get to the quarterback, get to the running back. That's your goal. In the new defensive scheme that Brandon Staley has erected here, that's no longer your goal. Your mission is now to stay on a blocker, and then when the running back or quarterback decides what to do, you then move off the blocker and stop the runner or the quarterback. And I think that fundamentally was not done. And that's where you saw some of those gaping holes on defense. Now, yes, would personnel help? Sure. Would practice and more repetitions at that help? Damn well it would. So I don't want to sit here and say that no one's coming through that door, we're screwed, because I do think some of this is, it's early and the scheme takes time. But nevertheless, the defense got smoked on the ground. And it just, you can't have that.
Yeah. And me saying that, it's not going to get fixed in 1 week. It's not going to get fixed in a month. And truthfully, it's probably not going to get fixed for the duration of the season. The bleeding might recess a little bit as the season goes on. I'm sure Tillery and the players will learn and adjust a little bit more. But this is going to have to be a priority for this team come the offseason, come, of course, for the draft, because you have to put some more priority in this. Depending on how Jerry Tillery ends up panning out, we had already said months ago that this was a make or break year for him. Justin Jones and both Linval Joseph and Justin Jones are free agents next year. We don't know what's going to happen with that. So this is definitely going to be a priority for this team to shore up that interior defensive line in some form or fashion. Let me go to point 2.
Bellator MMA returns to San Jose Friday, April 15th. Fresh off his world title victory, undefeated featherweight champion AJ Mercenary McKee takes on former 3-time world champ Patricio Pitbull in an immediate must-see rematch. Don't miss McKee versus Pitbull 2, a battle between two of the best featherweights on the planet. Friday, April 15th at the SAP Center. For tickets, go to Ticketmaster.com.
Spring it on with 40 to 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and GapFactory.com. Matching styles for the family are on sale too. Shop it all through April 12th.
Point 2 is Joe Lombardi, and this is in 2 different ways here. I'll say the first one, because I think Joe Lombardi actually shares a little bit of blame here with Brandon Staley. When Storm Norton was getting just absolutely obliterated on the right side of the line, you could even hear Tony Romo saying this on the broadcast. He was wondering why they're not giving Storm Norton any help throughout, this whole time frame that Micah Parsons is just absolutely dominating him. I thought that when they eventually did end up giving him help and putting a tight end on that side, just to give Parsons a little bit of chip off the line, by that point, they should have done it much sooner. So that's one adjustment I think that they could have done better as the game went on. You got to jump on that sooner when you can see that almost every single snap, Micah Parsons just blowing through that line. But here's the bigger blame, and this is more solely on Joe Lombardi, in my opinion. The Chargers have had 10 trips to the red zone, Dan. Only 3 of them have resulted in a touchdown. 3 of them three.
I may not be a mathematician, but 30% is not good.
No. Another 3 have, or 2, is it 2 or 3? It could be 2 or 3. Another 2 or 3 have resulted in turnovers, where the rest have been at best field goals, and I'm not even counting ones that have either been made or missed. But like you said, Dan, a 30% touchdown ratio out of 10 red zone trips is not what we expected for this team. 10 red zone trips is fine, but you have to learn to put people away when you have those type of opportunities. And the Chargers have missed numerous opportunities. Officiating aside, I get that. We'll get into that. But the Chargers, and more specifically, Joe Lombardi, has to understand what he can do to scheme up a better way for the Chargers to get 7 on the board. I'm still waiting for the 2 tight end sets that I was expecting to have in the red zone. That hasn't happened yet. I liked the fact that we got Jared Cook involved a little bit more. Obviously, that didn't end up coming to fruition given the officiating scenario. But I'm looking for these type of mismatches. You have 2 huge guys here. I understand you're trying to match up personnel, what have you, but you got to do something better, especially when you're talking about who you're playing this next coming week, because 30% is not going to cut it against Kansas City.
Okay, so I push back on that a little bit because live, it felt, because it was interesting because when I was watching the game live at SoFi, it did not feel like there were some flash throws that Justin Herbert made. We're like, holy crap, this guy's a magician. But like on the whole, it didn't feel like Herbert had this 300 plus yard game. I didn't feel like he did great. Going back and watching it again, Herbert was fantastic. And there were so many times where he was doing the things you were asking for. And then there was a holding. And then there was offensive pass interference. And then there was a random call. Like so many times they could not get in a groove because of just some random crap.
I got it.
That like you can't prepare for. I mean, some of it is self-inflicted. Like some of the penalties, holdings, false starts, all that kind of stuff. Like I get it.
Takes the whole momentum out of the drive. I totally get that. Get that.
But like some of that scheme stuff, like if those two, for example, if just the 2 touchdowns were not called back, this is a 14-point swing the other way. Dallas is already out of the game. So like, I'm not blaming the refs, but like but there is some blame to go.
Yeah, they played an intricate part of the game. There was bad officiating on both sides. Both sides. You look at Dallas. Dallas walked away with some. They got away with some calls. The Chargers got away with some calls, but obviously, most notably, with Jerry Jones sitting up in Les Snead's box, most likely sitting over a stadium that he said, "Well, I had a nice hand in making sure that this place was created." I'm sure he was loving it.
He was.
But Chargers fans look at that and look, I don't want to play the blame game here for the officials, but you can't say that much laundry that was thrown on that field throughout the entirety of the game did not play a part in this. It was horrible. Oh, and I think it's been 200, if I remember the number correctly, it's 214 penalties that have been thrown in the first 2 weeks. 11 of those were all taunting penalties. 8 of them were just thrown this past week. So I don't know what's happening, but the officiating needs to stay consistent because you go back and you really take a good look at some of the plays. There's stuff that happens on both sides of the ball, especially when we're talking about illegal shifts. You can find one for Dallas at that point in the game where they did an illegal shift and it wasn't called. And there's no consistency. But when there's that many flags throughout the game, it just sucks, man. I think it was Craig that actually said it. I think it was the day after. Made me laugh when I saw his tweet on Monday morning when he said, I caught myself doing 60 in a 55-mile-an-hour zone, and I was looking somewhere for the officials. But that's the reality. After every single play, you felt like, okay, well, where's the flag? I'm waiting for it. So, yes, I'm not going to be a baby and whine about the officials saying that they robbed the Chargers or anything like that. Other people can have that opinion, and that's totally fine, and it may be even justifiable. It's totally fine. I will probably agree with you in that circumstance. But the Chargers had numerous opportunities in this game to put it away, and they didn't come away with it. And Dan, I get your point. Certain things take the momentum away. Officiating obviously played a big part in that. But moving forward, especially when you're playing teams like who you're going to be playing this upcoming week at Kansas City, you can't be 30% in the red zone. You have to score points. 30% in the red zone, to me, sorry to say it, is an Anthony Lynn-led offense. You expect more out of this offense.
Now, I do think that context matters. And for folks that go back and watch the game, like you'll see the momentum swings from, we'll just call it calls. Whether or not they were right or wrong, we'll just say is calls. What makes it difficult is usually there's either incorrect calls or inconsistent calls. And that's kind of the theme that you're having to deal with. Where, one team got penalized for this, and why did the other team? Or, like, that was wrong. What we had on Sunday was both, which made it so much harder to reconcile. Like, what kind of loss was this? Like, was this just one of those fluke losses where it's like, look, the world is out to get us? typical Chargers, or like, was that actually true? Like, did we get screwed? Like, there's a lot to be said about bad calls, but when one's called one way for one reason, and then for a different reason it's called the same but the opposite, like it makes it tough. And so you saw like fourth down conversions due to penalties converted by the Cowboys, i.e. Kaiser White gets called for a defensive pass interference when he's trying to cover the running back in the flat. Fast forward to the end of the game, Keenan Allen falls, i.e. is tripped by defender, probably by mistake, maybe not called. You saw the illegal shift on Jared Cook. Technically, I think it was on Mike Williams, but the Jared Cook touchdown play called back. 2 plays later, you saw a defender draped all over Mike Williams, and the ball hits him in the back, not called. You saw holding on, I think it was Storm Norton, when there was, I think it was Micah Parsons who was coming in, and he got chipped. I think it got chipped by the running back. That turned into the Donald Parham touchdown. That wasn't.
Cook that ended up chipping him, if I remember correctly.
Was it Cook?
It was Cook that chipped him, and they called it a hold, yes.
There were so many of these. There was a Keenan Allen taunting penalty when the guy speared him with his helmet to his back.
I'll say this about that one, though. I was even sitting at home. Because
I was telling Keenan, shut up, stop.
Yes, that's the exact same thing I was saying. Because I saw where he was going with it, and I'm telling him at that point, I was like, okay, stop. You're going to get caught. And sure enough, it was. I mean, God, you take that taunting penalty and compare it to what was called in Seattle on Sunday, and it's night and day. Keenan Allen, you could make a case that should have been called. Okay, whatever you want to say. I think he went a little bit too overboard with it. He shouldn't have done that in the long run. But Dan, how can you forget the illegal man downfield, Ode Abuche, on his call? What? That is one of the biggest phantom calls, and it happened just a few hours later in the Ravens and the Chiefs game. Literally the same situation, and they called the exact same thing. So even if you want to look outside of the Dallas Charger game, the officiating in the first 2 weeks has been absolutely ridiculous. And I get that. But when you have those opportunities, and of course I'm seeing the comments in here, and a lot of people are feeling the same way. Yes, the players have to execute on the field. Yes, I get Joe Lombardi is calling the plays. The players obviously have to execute it at the end of the day. But as a team, from the coaches to the players alike, and I'm hoping that this is going to get better, but the trend is in 2 weeks, the run defense needs a lot of work, and the red zone offense needs to get better.
Yep, I would agree. A few comments here, Jake. We've got someone who is disappointed with Kenneth Murray, who hopes that he should be playing much better in run defense. I honestly didn't see Kenneth Murray as much of a hindrance as other people did. But he could have been better. I think his average yards gained from tackles, I think, was a lot more than the other two linebackers. But like a lot of that is him trying to clean up incorrect issues that other people had made.
Collectively, there's a lot of people that you can blame on defense for the way that they tackled on Sunday.
Yes, exactly. I don't know if that's
everybody tackled poorly.
I don't know if that's just a Russ thing. I don't know if it's just them being hyped and nervous and what. I mean, I doubt it. But yes, fundamentals was the issue, and I think that's why when you heard Brandon Staley post game, it's not about that. It's not about the Cowboys. It's not about the officiating. It's on us. And you go back and watch it, and you see how we literally shot ourselves in the foot, and that was tough. But it's one of those okay, but if the referee crap didn't happen, we still would have won.
Right, I get it.
And Vizcaino, we have to talk about Vizcaino. He missed a kick, and that one hurt. The end of the half when they almost got a touchdown. And Derwin James saved our, you know what? I'm sitting there watching it, and I got Cowboys fans who are down one row over to the left, and all of us just what is happening? That should never have happened. But there was one person in here that talked about earlier. We did not talk about one of the goods, which was my man, your man of the people, Asante Samuel Jr., Jake, had a day, and I believe it's currently leading for Rookie of the Week award, if I'm not mistaken. First interception in the NFL. Looked pretty good. He might be CB1 out of this draft right now. Right now?
I mean, it's looked good, and I'll even give it to him if we go back to missed calls for a second. I mean, he was damn close on that fourth down call by Dallas. Very questionable. Could have one of the flags that should have been thrown wasn't on Asante Samuel Jr. on that coverage play. I've seen a hell of a lot less that has been called defensive PI than that. But outside of that, he played a great game, and through the first 2 weeks, he's had one of the lowest quarterback ratings for anybody that's been throwing his direction. He's put in a solid first 2 weeks of the season. Now, granted, game against Washington, they weren't able to throw that much anyways. In this game, they didn't throw for different reasons because they were running the ball so well. So I think his first big test, obviously, will be this week against Patrick Mahomes. We'll obviously see where he's going to be covering, if Brandon Staley's going to choose to move his corners around a little bit. I know because of the speed of Mike Davis, we haven't even talked about Mike Davis yet on this aspect. There were a lot of things that you could take away from him that were definitely not good from a defensive standpoint. So I'll be interested to see if Mike Davis stays with Tyreek Hill because of his speed alone throughout the entirety of next week, or if Staley chooses to rotate his defensive backs. But we'll see about that.
It's going to be interesting. Folks are down on Kenneth Murray. I think it was Craig who had mentioned that he thinks that he should be going in as edge versus a middle linebacker. I don't know. Kenneth Murray is very good. It might take him a couple weeks to get up to par with kind of the scheme and everything. But to Craig's point earlier, when he talked about he's a hunter, needs to be going downhill. He should be able to do that from the inside. That's kind of the glorious part of this scheme. So give it time. I don't want to overreact. I know we can all overreact about this for a while now, but I don't think Kenneth Murray is really part of the problem right now, in my opinion. Sherd74, which I don't know if you're listening, why Sherd74 or Sherd74? I want to know what that story is. Agrees. Asante Samuel Jr. James Wagner, bolt up everyone. God bless. Thank you, James. Appreciate it. Look, Jake, we have lots of reasons to be upset about this game. Lots of reasons to be excited about this game. But at the end of the day, and you can't take this away from any Chargers fans, we had a home game at SoFi. Chargers fans showed up, and after all of what went wrong, Chargers were a stupid penalty away from having the go-ahead touchdown with Jared Cook, and still only lost to a 56-yard field goal. That was about as much headwind as you could get. And they still almost won that game. So, yes, that's a silver lining. Yes, it doesn't matter if you win by 100 or by 1. I get it. But, we went up against a high-powered offense. They scored 20 points. Our offense got screwed over by a bunch of penalties and by a bunch of areas in which, some of it was boneheaded penalties. Their right tackle was not good. They didn't execute when they needed to. But, on the whole, we're going to be okay. So give it time. A lot of these guys did not play preseason. A lot of these guys are in a brand new scheme. And for Justin Herbert to be able to do what he is doing right now, Derwin James is healthy. Joey Bosa is healthy. Things are coming into form here. And if you ask for it, to put it in perspective, 500-foot view, Jake, if we were rewinding to before week 1, Would you have taken 1-1 through 2 weeks? I sure as hell would have.
Well, sure. Like I said, if somehow the Chargers can find their way to a 3-3 or maybe, dream scenario, 4-2 record through this first 6-game stint, that would be amazing. We knew from the get-go these first 6 games were going to be insane. They're going to be tough. And now when you start looking at, and you have to start really looking at this from a running back scenario on the opposite team, you look at some of the running backs you have to go up against over the next 4 weeks. That's what you really need to eyeball. Again, it's not going to get fixed in 1 week. 1-1 necessarily isn't it. 1-1's not the surprise, Dan. But much like everybody has said in the comment section, it's more of how the Chargers lost. It's more of how they did it than the one loss in the column right now.
Now, but again, the reason they lost, when you say why they lost, what are you alluding to? Are we talking officiating? Are we talking like what do you mean by how they lost?
It's how they lost, Dan, because yes, I can only blame officiating so far. That's just me. I mean, I get it. The officiating came in, if you want to pigeonhole it to two crucial points in the game that took 14 points off the board for the Chargers. Okay, I get that. But take me through the rest of, the 3.5 quarters of the game. Self-inflicted penalties.
Okay.
You have a coaching staff that didn't adjust early enough to assist its right tackle that was clearly suffering, that was throwing its quarterback off throughout a majority of the first part of the game. Still threw for 300 yards. This offense, despite only putting up 20 points or fewer over the past 2 weeks, is still rated as a top 5 offense right now. Defensively, after everything that I just said about the run defense, as porous as it is, it's still 13th overall, but you have to look at that through the right microscope. It's because the Chargers have played one quarterback that got knocked out before halftime, another quarterback who barely threw the ball, and then a great quarterback that didn't have to throw the ball. And when he did, he threw an interception and threw for less than 300 yards, but didn't have to worry about it because the run game was going berserk. So look at that how you will. I get it. Pass defense has been better, but they're going to get a huge test come Sunday. They know this. This is not something that nobody knows. It's going to be a hard test. And yes, maybe Baltimore gave the Chargers a gift when they pulled out that win over the Chiefs to somehow keep them close, because we know that this is not the division to fall behind in if your goal is to make the playoffs.
I will say, man, like it felt so good to be at SoFi. The game was fun. We lost. That sucked. And then to go see like the Raiders win and then you see the Broncos win, you're like, you got to be freaking kidding me.
Spring it on with 40 to 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and GapFactory.com. Matching styles for the family are on sale too. Shop it all through April 12th.
Compassion, fearlessness, humility. These are a few things nurses are made of. And after earning a degree in finance and working in an office, I realized I'm supposed to be a nurse. It's what I'm made for. So I enrolled in Marian University's accelerated 16-month nursing program, designed for people with non-nursing bachelor degrees who want to transition into nursing. Devoted, brilliant, the list goes on. What are you made of? Search Marian ABSN to learn more.
And like, it was kind of not feeling good.
You know what? I mean, cheap shot, but if I played the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Giants in my first 2 weeks too, we'd probably be talking about a 2-0 start for this team.
Must be nice. But to see the Chiefs lose, I don't care how they lose. I don't care if like God himself came down and shined a bright light and blinded every one of the Chiefs and made them lose. Like they lost. That was a nice way to end what felt like a very beat a dead horse day for Chargers fans. But Jake, one of the things that we get to go do today that we haven't done in a minute is we get to listen to the feedback and the emotions of not only one another, but probably one of my favorite parts, and I think what a lot of people had told us were their favorite part of these shows, of the recaps especially, was being able to vent their frustrations, being able to voice their concerns or excitement on the show, and have Jake Hefner listen and react live without ever hearing it until the very moment it is played. And you mentioned at the top, we got 5 voicemails, one of which came in right at the last second before we went live. And so, Jake, without further ado, for folks who have not called in, give us a call on the Charges Unleashed hotline anytime. We will play them on upcoming episodes. For folks who have comments, feel free to put them in here. Keep going. Loving all the comments you guys are giving us. This is going to be a very fun segment. And again, this is going to be a staple of the show moving forward. So Charges Unleashed hotline, get used to it. Jake, are you ready for hotline voicemail number 1?
These are the reasons that I love this segment, because this is the time to get all the emotions out. I know I'm not the only one. Everybody's emotional in the comments. I'm sure these calls are going to be emotional. But after today, it's going to be gone. I'm going to be looking forward to Kansas City. I will be putting my optimism hat on, even though some people probably think that it doesn't exist. And the emotion out of me, like this, you won't see until the next time that the Chargers lose. So I'll put it away. I'm not going to be, just this pessimistic Pete guy for all time. So
Pessimistic
this is
Pete.
what these sessions are for. It just came to me. This is what these sessions are for. Vent the emotion. And this is not the first time that we've done this season, but this is the first time that we have done it when the Chargers have lost. And if it's any indication from what the calls were last year, I can't wait to hear this. So, Dan, go ahead.
All right, here we go. Voicemail number 1.
Hey, Dan. Hi, Jake. Just got out work. I wasn't able to see the game, either go to it or see it on TV, but, man, am I disappointed. That's all I can do is sigh. The defense held up their end, the offense. Maybe it's that sophomore stuff we were talking about, but from what I've been hearing, the refs versus the Chargers, and America's team can't be going 0-2, right? Anyway, hope for a better week, but we cannot lose games like this with the AFC West winning their game. If this continues, I just see the Chargers becoming to what the Clippers are to the Lakers. And obviously we can't let that happen. But hopefully we win next week. Both up.
First off,
I fear, I think from like a level of emotion standpoint, for some reason, Dan, I think that you've listened to these and you're going to tier them going up as it relates from like overall depression to anger rage. This was at the lower end of that spectrum. Wow. Okay. So a couple things to unpack from that. First off, let me address the sophomore slump thing, because I've heard this flying around as far as Justin Herbert goes. Yes, 2 touchdowns to 3 interceptions so far through the first 2 weeks. But look at everything else.
In context.
Like Dan said, in context. Do you know that with Justin Herbert, it's only Patrick Mahomes through their first 17 games that have thrown for, I think it's over 5,300 yards in their first 17 games. It's only the 2 of them. That's insanity.
Sick.
That's some good company to have. I'll even give some credit to Derek Carr right now, because as of right now, as it stands, passing leaders, Derek Carr, Kenneth Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Tom Brady. That's some pretty good company to have right now. Still have a top 5 offense. He's clearly been moving the ball in between the 20s. Need to capitalize in the red zone, obviously. But for what he did last week when he had protection and a decent right tackle that was doing his job last week, he can absolutely obliterate anybody. So I think that this sophomore slump notion is a microcosm that everybody is looking way too much into this game and just looking at the total TD to interception ratio alone and taking that a little bit too far, because look at the full picture of what Justin Herbert is doing. If you're going to say that he's the sophomore slump, well, hey, he's also the best chance that this team has to win any game.
Yes, folks, guys, it's okay. He meant Kyler Murray, not Kenneth Murray. Calm down. But
did I say Kyler Murray? I'm sorry.
I think you said Kenneth Murray. But
did I say Kenneth Murray? I apologize.
no one's letting you have any mistakes, Jake.
Yes. Sorry, man, no, and it's fine. It's fine. I own my mistakes. It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, next voicemail coming in from Raheem from the 302. Let's see what Raheem has to say.
Hey, guys. My name is Raheem. I'm a Chargers fan living in Delaware. First things first, Mike Williams looks like a stud this year. That's awesome.
Oh, no, what happened?
What did you do, Dan?
Did I break it?
You probably
I think I broke it.
Good job.
Did I break it?
Stud this year. That's awesome. The red zone offense sucks. Stormy Merchant sucks. The refs, Jerry Jones paid a lot of money to win this game today. I mean, it's so obvious. The phantom calls every time we scored a touchdown. Oh, man. I need another drink. Ooh.
Yes.
Seriously.
Yes.
Herbert has to make better decisions with the ball, man. I mean, some of them throws, he's like staring down his receiver, and the defense is all over it. We know he has a cannon, but look, man, sometimes you can tuck it and run, man. You are pretty mobile, you know? I don't know, man. Thank you guys for listening to me. Thank you.
I can see it. I can see it now. It's slightly going up. Like I said, it's slightly going up. That I can feel a little bit more of the anger. So, one point that I did want to get to as far as what he said about Mike Williams. I'll start there because I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say that I'm a Mike Williams hater. However, on this show, I have definitely had my low points with Mike Williams, as I know a lot of people have. I did make an assumption that Josh Palmer was the shot across the bow, that the Chargers would not be bringing back Mike Williams for that. I felt that it was similar in the Kenneth Murray to Denzel Perryman drafting from last year. I felt like the Chargers were just getting 1 year ahead of all that. But what Mike Williams is doing right now, and Dan, I know that you're going to go all over this when I'm done talking.
Can't wait.
But Mike Williams, and maybe this is one thing that we can give Joe Lombardi a lot of credit to, because as everybody's saying, he's the X receiver now. This is the Michael Thomas role that he's essentially taking over in Joe Lombardi's type of offense. And he's doing what he needs to do and playing in a very different way. This is not the Mike Williams that Phillip Rivers or Justin Herbert last year would just be simply chucking 50-50 balls up to it and saying, hey, good luck, Mike. Hope you don't come down on the ground with an injury, and hopefully, obviously, you catch the ball. Mike is finding a way to get open. It's reminded me a lot. Now, yes, Mike Williams definitely does not run the prettiest route. Next to Josh Palmer and Keenan Allen, who the hell does run a prettier route than that? I get it. But Mike Williams is winning battles now, to me, the way that Antonio Gates used to win battles and get open. He's not going to win the prettiest route, not going to run the prettiest route, but he's going to use his size to his advantage and box people out to get open. I get it. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, Robert Carper had a topic here, and I was going to ask this because you mentioned back in the day with Phillip Rivers how all he was doing was chucking 50-50 balls to Mike Williams. Is what we're seeing now from Mike Williams more of a testament to Joe Lombardi or more of a knock on the previous regime?
I think it's a little bit of both. You have to look at it that way because through the duration that Anthony Lynn was the coach of this team, that's a showing of an adaptive coach and playing to your players' strengths. So we all knew when Anthony Lynn was the coach of this team, you knew what Keenan Allen was. Keenan Allen was your do-it-all wide receiver. Keenan can do a lot of different things for this offense. But you looked at Mike Williams and you're like, okay, well, after we saw the emergence of Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson last year, Mike Williams up until that point was known as your deep threat because we had plenty of highlights of him doing that. But now You give Brandon Staley the reins, you give Joe Lombardi the reins, and what they've been able to do with Mike Williams specifically and how he's gone out and executed has been nothing short of fantastic.
Yep, I would agree. I think it's incredible. And yes, I am going to take this moment, Jake. Thank you so much. For all the folks who are out here talking about Mike Williams can't run routes, what the hell? What, like, honestly.
If you want to piss off Dan Wolkenstein, you talk about Mike Williams route running. Here it goes.
Oof. Okay, guys. Jake, you and I talked about this, I want to say right before preseason. I want to say it was a little bit before training camp when we heard the Mike Williams going to be the Michael Thomas role stuff. I told you, and folks got on me like I was crazy, that, look, Michael Thomas is a great wide receiver. Great. But look at how he got his receptions in New Orleans with Drew Brees. Like, running slant routes is not that difficult. Now, yes, he ran more than just slant routes. But slant routes, in routes, stop cuts. Like, Mike Williams can do that. And so, yeah, he's looking like a Michael Thomas type. And when you're watching him in training camp, and you're saying, oh, Mike Williams can't run routes, we shouldn't sign him. We're wasting $20 million. Like, stop. Do you think any of that matters on Sunday? We heard from the coaching staff, from his teammates, from him himself, how much he has improved as a wide receiver this offseason. And folks wanted to go out and put him off to pasture because he was either injured or because he can't stay on the field or because he can't run routes and he doesn't look as good or doesn't look like he's trying and blah, 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 blah. Stop it. Like, let the guy go on the field before you give him any type of flack. It was just so unreal to me how that whole narrative started. And to see him now just balling out, and honestly, him and Keenan Allen, like a lot of people thought, well, if he gets the Michael Thomas type of like volume, what happens to Keenan Allen? Nothing. They're both going to get it. Like, love it. So super happy for Mike Williams. The guy deserves it. The question then becomes, Jake, let's say he keeps up this pace. Does Jake Hefner re-sign him?
Yeah, you make a hard case that you do, 100%. Again, I said assuming that the charge, like the case would be, again, prior to anything of this year, did anybody, given if you take everything that you saw in the first 4 years under Anthony Lynn with Mike Williams on this team, was anybody really making the case that they were going to sign him, given whatever you want to say about his injuries or how the Chargers utilized him? I think a majority of people were saying, I mean, maybe not a majority, but there was a good handful of people that probably say that they wouldn't. Now, I'm just simply making an assumption here that that's what I felt that the Josh Palmer pick would have been if the Chargers chose ultimately not to re-sign Mike Williams because of the things that Joshua Palmer can develop into, given his college career. He can go down there and he could jump for those 50-50 balls. And obviously we've seen his route running. He can play that type of a role that Mike Williams is starting to develop himself into. Now, given what I've seen for the first 2 weeks, like you said, if this trend continues, I mean, the only knock on it I'll say is that you're going to have a hell of a lot of money wrapped up in your two starting wide receivers where it could be more or less spent better elsewhere for certain positions of greater need.
Fair.
That would be right now the biggest thing working against Mike Williams is a case that the Chargers are going to have to invest that money somewhere else. But Mike Williams is right now playing for his money, whether it's the Chargers or someone else. We'll see ultimately who he ends up playing for in 2022.
Friend of the show, friend of the network, Tyler Lawrence, I believe, the Master Bolt. Tyler, you do not need to fight me on this. And the reason you don't need to fight me on this is because I am not saying that. I am not saying he is winning with route running. I am saying it doesn't matter. I'm saying I don't care what his route running looks like on a stupid drill in July. Like, that has no bearing on what's going to happen in the regular season. And so I said this then, I'm going to say it now. I don't care how Mike Williams does it. His job is to catch balls. Period.
Are you
Catch
calling
balls,
the Chargers
catch
Unleashed hotline right now? Is that what you're doing?
I'm
'Cause
responding.
now you're getting heated. You had this spat with a lot of people months ago. I don't think we need to open up that can of worms.
You're right. You are right. And yes, and you are correct though, Tyler. He is using his strengths versus his weakness. And you did hear the coaching staff talk about that constantly, where they want to put guys in positions to where they can accentuate their strengths and diminish the weaknesses. And that's exactly what they're doing. Okay. Ready for voicemail number 3? We got Mike Williams. We've got some talk. This is a short and sweet one. Let's hear what the 402 has to say. I think we're going to hear about mediocrity today.
Well, unfortunately, this is too much like the old Chargers, and disappointing loss to a very mediocre team. I'm glad the refs could take points off the board and help the Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, buy a game. But hey, this is where we're at. This is a Chargers game. Hopefully, we can turn it around and not finish last in the division. Have a good one. Later.
Very reserved, extremely reserved. But what I got out of it was same old Chargers. Same old Chargers. Again, you witness a loss like this, the way that the Chargers did it. Again, Dan, I go back to this. It's not the fact that they have one loss in their win-loss column right now. It's how they did it. Poor execution at the end of the day, regardless of whether it's Anthony Lynn, North Turner, Brandon Staley, or whoever else. It's poor execution that has gone on for the better part of a decade. Dan, you and I are sick of it. Chargers fan base is sick of seeing the same losses happen in similar fashion. Again, another loss to tally on for the big-time media to talk about as far as what they do in one-score games. They don't want to hear that anymore. So I get what he's talking about. But I will say this. If we're going to say the same old Chargers when they lose, think about if you can really say that when the Chargers win. Does it really feel the same from what you saw in Washington? Because there were a lot of things that were not going the Chargers' way. Again, there were some sloppy plays that were happening in Washington. And yet what took place in that game, you put together a drive the way they did to end that game in the final 6.5 minutes. That's not something the Chargers traditionally do.
I do not remember seeing that.
So that's a fair assessment to be in your feelings and think that it's same old Chargers because of a loss like that. I feel you. I understand it. Mm-hmm. But logically think about it when they win, the next time that they win, if you could say same old Chargers.
Yep. And I honestly don't know if this had that same old Chargers type of feel to me in terms of like the loss. Like it did in the sense that we had some terrible calls go the wrong direction. And like it did because we saw some poor offensive line play from one player. But like otherwise, like it felt like it was kind of on its own with what it was. And I don't know. I think I talked to you about this, Jake, afterwards, where like after that loss, I don't know why. Maybe I was on a high because I was in SoFi. That was a great rhyme, by the way. I don't know. I don't think this was as bad of a loss as everybody was saying. Like, there were things that we could fix. There were things that went wrong. But to look that, like, this is going to sound weird, but to look that good in that bad of a loss, like, I'll take it. And again, 1-1 with this gauntlet of a schedule we have coming up. If we can just get to 3-3, I'm going to feel so good about the rest of the season. Yes, Kapil has been mentioning, and we talked about this earlier, 20 points is not bad. I would have taken 20 points before the game and would have expected our offense to be able to beat that. Lombardi is getting some flack, I will say. They agreed with you, Jake. There are some issues with the red zone conversion, believing this is a Lombardi issue. It could be. It could be. And again, let's give it time. We know he had a great stint in New Orleans. He had some issues in Detroit, came back to New Orleans. Everybody was high on him last week, so we can't just all of a sudden go flip-flop this week. Yes, the refs definitely wanted to help with the spread. Did not want to help them get to 0-2, so figured they would be screwing us a little bit, maybe. Who knows? Robert brings it back, Jake. They lost so many games last year that they should have won, and against good teams. And I think that's probably where maybe this does feel like typical Chargers, is that was the game we should have won.
Of course. And
it is. Doesn't matter why we lost. We lost. And that's probably where people are getting in that feeling. James is trying to bring some optimism. This is not the same old Chargers. This is not the same old Chargers. All right, voicemail number 4, Jake. We're churning through these. Let's hear from John, what John has to say.
Hey, Charger fans. This is John. I've called you guys several times, but today I was just thinking, if we can just honestly go 2-0 for the first time since 2006, that'd be freaking awesome. It's against the Cowboys, no less, and we just again find a way to shoot ourselves in the asshole. Sorry for my language, and it's just no surprise. It's new franchise, new coach, new everything, and we just do it again. It's unfreaking real the way we lose. It's very rare when you watch a game and it's wow, that team pulled the Chargers at the last 2 minutes. It's always the Chargers pull the Chargers on the Chargers, and I'm just sick of it. I sound very young, but I'm very old in age, and I'm just beyond tired of it, and I'm just very upset. So that's all I really have to say. Whether you play me or not, I don't care. I just need something to air my frustrations on. So have a good night, guys. See you later.
It's beautiful. There is one thing that he did say. I'm not going to – obviously, we all heard him say where he's going to shoot himself, and that was fantastic.
Please don't do that.
Please don't do that at home, obviously. But oh, my God. I knew you were going to escalate him like this, Dan. That was fantastic. One thing that he did say that strangely enough, I was actually looking up prior to the game that you know how long it's been since the Chargers have started 2-0, Dan? Because I had my tweet ready if the Chargers were able to pull it out. The Chargers haven't gone 2-0 since 2012. Since 2012.
9 years.
Obviously, this team is notorious for its slow starts in December. But it's been a minute since they've been able to put together their first 2 games of the season and make them W's. So I get it. I get it. And now you put yourself in a 1-1 hole, still 2 weeks of the season, but you now go up against 2 straight divisional opponents. You have Cleveland and Baltimore right beyond that. Again, for these next 4 weeks, it's not really going to get that much easier. And unfortunately, I'm going to just prepare everybody for it. These mistakes, are they correctable? Yes, but they're not going to be going away in 1 week. These will unfortunately be recurring. Chargers fans and the Chargers fan base as a whole has to learn to live with mistakes. That's just what this team historically does.
It's a good life lesson.
The key here is limit the amount of mistakes that you make. That's all we're asking for. Let's not have the same mistakes be the reason that we're losing these games. The same reasons. What did we say last year, Dan? We literally could think up of, it felt like the coaching staff was thinking up of new ways to lose a game on a week-by-week basis. The way that the Chargers had to agonize through some of their losing streak that they had last year. It was bad. But you just have to find a way to limit the mistakes. This is not, unfortunately, the Patriots. The Patriots who never shoot themselves in the foot, obviously, a la with Tom Brady. We'll see if that ends up happening with the Mac Jones era. But the good teams figure out how to win the ugly games, and the good teams figure out how to limit the mistakes and don't beat themselves. That's all we're asking for. You can't eliminate all the mistakes, but just limit the amount of mistakes.
The one thing I will say, and I want to remind people of this, go back a year ago, and I think everyone kind of forgets, or at least has tried to forget, this team won and lost in spite of its coaching. Like, the team won no matter how much the coaching staff tried to screw them over. The team lost because the coaching staff screwed them over. Yes, there were other reasons, but that always happened. That is not happening this year so far. Like, sure, we could talk about nitpicking issues with being able to kind of have chop blocks or have chip help assistance with like your Storm Norton issue. Sure. We could talk about like red zone efficiency and maybe Lombardi needs to come up with a new scheme to help get more touchdowns. Sure. But like, we're not losing because we're getting outsmarted by a coach. We're not losing because we're not figuring out how to call a timeout. Like, that stuff seemingly has been fixed. So chill just a little bit on the like, oh, just like last year. Like, it kind of is, but also for very different reasons. And I would agree with, I'm going to say it wrong. I'm terrible with names. I apologize to everyone. Guphill. We had played poorly overall, but the fourth quarter we played well enough to win. You heard Brandon Staley talk about this, Jake. It's all about the end of the halves, the final 2 minutes at both sides. And if you look at those in a microcosm, both of them were left with our defense on the field, one of which was almost a touchdown on a random Hail Mary-ish play. And the other one, defense honestly bowed up, but still a 56-yard field goal. Like, if you lose to that, you know, what are you going to do? Like, it sucks. And the Chargers, if they would have not had that stupid penalty against Mike Williams, Jared Cook gets touchdown, and it's a whole different feeling.
Could you imagine just for a second if Mike McCarthy was the head coach of the Chargers, and before the field goal ends up even getting made, if you're a Chargers fan and you're watching those last 2 minutes tick off the clock, and wondering about the time management that Mike McCarthy is currently dealing with, not giving his kicker any help to get it any closer to making a field goal and basically had to rely on a 56-yarder, I'd feel a hell of a lot more pissed off than that, especially with the Chargers kicking situation of saying, yeah, Tristan, or if this was the Money Badger, for example, go out there and go kick a 56-yard field goal. But I had plenty of time and the ability to take a timeout to maybe get you another 10 or something yards. Cowboys were lucky in that situation, and Greg the Leg Zuerlein literally bailed Mike McCarthy out in that scenario.
I heard a few people talk about, like, oh, the reason why that happened was because the end zone clock was not working. I'm like, get out of here. Like,
stop it.
Do you honestly think that the one clock...
If you are a coach that of Mike McCarthy's stature that has been in this league that long enough, you should not have to rely on a play clock to A, know how many timeouts you have, B, know how much over or time is left in regulation of the game, and know situational football well enough. He's a Super Bowl coach. He knows how to do this. Man, again, he got bailed out because he would have been catching so much flack if that did not end up going through the uprights.
Yeah, and again, just to put a bow on that, you're telling me that the coaching staff, the entire coaching staff, had no idea what the time was because the clock was broken, but conveniently was able to call a timeout with 4 seconds left. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop. Blue Deftone, how do I call your guys' hotline? Right there. 323-374-5651. Give us a call. Leave a voicemail. You will be on an upcoming episode. All right, Jake. Last one of the night. This one is a bit of a long one.
I hope it's long for the right reasons.
And honestly, I will say I have not even listened to this yet, so this might end up becoming completely wasted time, but maybe it won't. Last voicemail of the night comes from Gerald in Connecticut, friend of the show.
Yes. East Coast always brings the fire on these. Let's hear it.
Let's see what Gary has to say. Gerald.
Chargers Unleashed. This is Gerald from Connecticut. Huge Chargers fan out on the East Coast in Connecticut. I want to talk about, the game on Sunday. It was a tough loss, to be honest. That was a game we should have won maybe pretty easily. We could have scored easily over 30 points against the Cowboys. I get Dallas credit. They won the game. I think it was another missed opportunity, and the Chargers have had those, but I feel pretty differently with this Charger team. I think this team can make the playoffs, but they got to shore some things up, especially the run defense. They gave over 200 yards last Sunday. They got to fix that up. The offensive line didn't play particularly as well as week 1 and week 2. So the loss of Brian Balliet is big. Hopefully he'll come back pretty soon. And then the penalties. We're the most penalized team in the NFL through the first 2 weeks, and that's got to be cleaned up. But I really have high hopes for this team. I really feel this is a playoff team, and Brandon Staley is the right coach for this team. And I feel this team can do some great things, maybe this year into the future. And Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, Joey Bosa, Derwin James. And I think having the crowds back at SoFi is going to be a big deal. And I think they played with a lot of energy. The crowd helped out, but maybe a little bit anxious, made a lot of mental mistakes. So hopefully things can be cleaned up. But I'm pretty optimistic going forward. And we feel this Sunday is a big game against Kansas City. I'm sometimes pessimistic too to the Chargers, but I feel good. I feel this team can do some great things. So let me know what you think. Vote up from Connecticut. This is Gerald. Alrighty. Thanks a lot for taking my call. Bye.
Thank you very much to Gerald from Connecticut for calling in. First off, Dan, before I respond to his points, so how much money did you wire to Connecticut to have him end this on this hotline on a positive note? How much?
Hey!
Go ahead. Let everybody know. How much did you wire?
Hey, I wired him 37 lightning bolts, and they're on layaway, so it's probably going to take a while. Gerald!
So $370. Got it.
I can always count on Gerald or someone in the Bolt fam to bring this thing back around, take away all the pessimistic BS, bring it up, back to optimism, back to positivity. Jay, there were things that went wrong, sure. But if you look at it, grand scheme, there's a lot more that has gone right these past 2 weeks than, in my opinion, have gone wrong. And the things that have gone wrong are fixable. And you heard Brandon Staley talk about that today. Like some of the issues with the offensive line with Storm Norton, fixable, fundamental stuff. Some of the stuff with the defense and not being able to block or to defend the run was not a scheme issue. It was more of a execution issue. We've got arguably a top 5 quarterback. We've got a very good coaching staff. We've got ballers on both sides of the ball, whether it's offense or defense. Like, let's chill a little bit on the pessimism. I understand we're used to this stuff. Like, we're hurt. We've gotten so many scars in this Chargers team. But this is a new era, okay? And we have to give this team a little bit of time to get this right. So, that was 5 voicemails that we had since the week loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Again, for folks who are wanting to call in for the next episode, whether it's giving your predictions, whether it's your keys, whether it's your reactions to the games, give us a call at 323-374-5651, and you will also be on an upcoming Chargers Unleashed show. Jake, we have a fun week ahead. We get to go up and talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. We've got some special guests coming up that are going to help us with that. Anything else we want to talk about week 2 before we officially put a bow on it and get ready for week 3?
Like I said, this is what these conversations are for. I love talking to Chargers fans when we're in this mental state. One, because it's hilarious just to see all the emotions fly, myself included, because yes, I definitely get overused with my emotions, even to the point where I confused Kenneth Murray with Kyler Murray. I even go that far out of my brain with my emotions.
That's when you make a mistake.
Clearly, I make my mistakes on here as well. But Dan, you'd have to really search through the Chargers hotline archives, shooting themselves in the proverbial asshole has to be one of the best comments that I've ever heard on this show. And there's been some doozies. If you've been listening to this show for a while, I have a feeling that we're only going to go up from there, and not in a positive way. I think that there's going to be even worse than that, which is going to only make this better and more entertaining for when Chargers fans are in their emotions. But this is why I love talking about this, because this is the opportunity for us to just air it all out. Because we go on to week 3 and we somehow can come out of this with a different result, we're not going to be talking about week 2 after this, if that ends up being the case. But yes, to someone's comments in there, the Chargers can sneak into a playoff if they can get a good divisional record. And it starts on Sunday.
Ooh. Jay, okay, quick sneak peek. How pessimistic are you about this coming game?
How pessimistic am I? I mean, first off, man, I mean, you're still catching me today on the show. The emotions are still high. I have not officially closed the book on this until the show's over. But there's a lot of things that need to get fixed. And I know that they're not going to get fixed. And you're going up against arguably the best quarterback in the league, a guy who has dominated you over the course of since he's been in the NFL. The last time that he went up against Justin Herbert, it took an overtime victory for them to get out of it, and that was Justin Herbert's debut. Now you got to go on the road in Arrowhead, which it's tough for anybody to win there. And under the circumstances, both teams coming off of a loss, this is going to be an extremely hard-fought battle for both teams, because they both know what's at stake. But I'll say this right now, Dan. I'll put the pessimism to the side, and because I literally just thought of this.
Ooh, oh, I like this.
Remember when Patrick Mahomes was at a golf tourney not too long ago, and he said, "I'll see it when I believe it." How do you think that this Chargers fan base is going to react if they can somehow come out of Arrowhead with a victory? How much do you think that they're going to think about that one quote?
That is going to become a t-shirt.
That, to me, is the biggest thing that's on the line.
Oh, I can't wait. Can you imagine? Okay, folks, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Chargers Unleashed, live recap of the Week 2 loss, unfortunately, to the Dallas Cowboys. If you have not already, give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe on podcast as well as on YouTube so you don't miss any of these in the future. We will all see it when we believe it. Before we close up shop, quick shout out. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. There are far too many for us to be able to talk about. We got Tyler Lawrence, Julio, Blue Deftone, Shred74, James Wagner. We've got Kapil. We've got Matthew. We've got so many that I can't even get through. Robert. I'm going to keep going here. Jake, I think that we're over it. I can't do anymore. My eyes have gotten blurry. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Chargers Unleashed. You can find my lovely, beautiful co-host who is now back with his Hawaiian tan and the scrubs. It's now looking fresh. Jake, welcome back. You find him on Twitter.
I always use the guys over at Chargers Chat Podcast because nobody knows beards the way that those guys do on that show. So don't even try to compliment my beard, Dan, because it's nothing like their guys's. They are my muse if the day ever comes to where me growing a beard. But yeah, I got no shot.
You can find Jake at Jake T. Hefner on Twitter, myself at Chargers Homer. Again, find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and anywhere you find your podcast. Thank you to our friends over Charger Bolt family over at Brewery X and, of course, UFC Fit in Temecula for sponsoring the show. You'll be hearing from us tomorrow as we sneak peek the preview matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs. Guys, have a great night. Enjoy your evening, and we'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed. Have a great night, guys. Stay safe. And don't